Welcome to rSlash Petty Revenge, Malicious Compliance, and NuclearRevenge, in which we read a series of stories where some good people are wronged and are the receivers of some terrible, malevolent, malicious, and mean actions. And then they decide to pay the perpetrators with the same coin. Much to the dismay of these jerks who dare to behave like horrible people first, and now are shocked that someone would cast the rock back at them in the same way they casted it first. I personally like this type of stories because they are the basic proof that actions do have consequences. Humans are the only ones that can choose not to act because the aggressor is deemed not worth the time and effort. While animals will snap and act like a normal animal being aggravated and irritated by another one who is only being a nuisance. These stories are the perfect example that this old phrase, being the bigger man, is nothing but absolute, utter nonsense, bullshit, and total nincompoop. Yeah, I use an archaic, old-fashioned insult. Why? Because 90% of the time, this phrase is nothing but shitty code for being a doormat for people who are obviously in the wrong, deserve to have consequences coming to them, and are probably mean, but will cry like a hypocrite if people be mean to them back in retaliation. So without further ado, let us begin. Story number 1. Grandma's Revenge. So I'm writing these lines during the first days of August 2023. Okay, so disclaimer, I'm on mobile, writing in a rush. The story was relayed to me by grandparents, so it may be embellished, yada yada yada. Let's go to the story. I immediately have to write this down because it's the most amazing thing I have ever heard. I was visiting my grandma and grandpa to celebrate a bunch of summer birthdays together. But when I pulled up to their house, the plot to their right was completely empty. As in, no stones, no base, no debris, just slightly overgrown grass. Grass, where there used to be a house. When the hellos were said and the party started, I absolutely had to know what happened. So I went to ask my grandparents, and goodness gracious, I was not expecting the roller coaster of a story that they told me. A couple of years ago, my grandparents had some very unpleasant neighbors. Loud at all hours, trash in the yard, arguing with other people on the street. Just absolute nuisances. It was a husband and a wife, and their adult son who would come and go irregularly. The wife would get into arguments with anyone about anything, and the husband would physically intimidate the people who spoke up for themselves. They weren't sure what exactly was the deal with the son, but it couldn't have been anything good, as it was well known that he had been in the county jail more than a few times. The house apparently reflected the tenants, as it looked awful. It was sagging and dilapidated, loose beams and peeling paint. But nothing was ever done about it due to the guy who rented out the place being a slumlord. We'll get to him later. It all came to a breaking point one night when my grandparents returned home to find their back door smashed in and some of my grandpa's guitars missing. Now, grandpa loves his music and has been singing and playing his whole life. So it's safe to say those guitars are not only very memorable to him, but damn expensive too. They of course went to the police, and after some digging they found that the guitars had been sold at a pawn shop or some place by the sun. They couldn't get the guitars back, unfortunately, but I believe my grandparents were fairly compensated since the guitars were insured. Today I learned the guitars have insurance. Given how expensive the guitars were, the theft was absolutely a felony, and the son once again ended up in jail. After that, the neighbors would harass my grandparents through the fence or on their porch, meaning it was difficult for them to even sit outside. They would call them foul names, throw trash over the fence, and the husband would still try to get physical. Now, while my grandpa is a very chill and mellow guy, my grandma will take shit from no one, especially not jerks like this. So what did she do? She got the house condemned. It was easy for her to do it. Really. She called the local authorities, the general attorney or property manager, I don't know. And they came and did an inspection, though it was clear by the outside of the house that it hadn't been properly maintained for a long time. One call led to more calls, and the property was deemed unfit to live in, which forced the rude neighbors to move out. I'm not sure what happened to them or where they went, but supposedly they were put up in a nearby hotel by the slumlord until the house could be fixed. Oh, the foreshadowing. Now enter the slumlord. Of course his tenants told him who had reported the house, so of course he's upset with my grandparents. Rather than fix the house though, he gets aggressive the first day he's there, yelling at my grandparents about how they are idiots for reporting him and how they've cost him a bunch of money and he's gonna sue them and on and on and on. It gets to the point where the across the street neighbors call the local police to come defuse the situation, which they do. A few weeks pass and my grandma hasn't seen the slumlord or anyone around to fix the house. Not being one to let things go easily, Grandma starts making frequent calls to a bunch of services, reporting the house and its lack of progress. Each time, the slumlord's truck would appear for a day and then leave without changing a thing. Grandpa said that he would block in their driveway, but since they stay home most of the time, it wasn't a major issue. Grandma disagreed. Finally, my grandma had complained enough that officials came out and condemned the house for demolition. This had two major effects. First, the rude neighbors were now practically homeless, since as soon as they and the slumlord ran out of money to pay for the hotel, they would be stranded. Second, the slumlord still had to pay a shitload of fines for the state of the house. The rest is more his fault than my grandma's actions. But he would refuse to pay and refuse to show up in court, leading to a warrant being put out for his arrest. A few months ago, the demolition team came and tore down the place, leaving the lot perfectly barren. They even removed the driveway, so now it just looks like an extension of the side yard. My grandparents were not sure of the final state of the neighbors and slumlord, but my grandma looked very pleased with herself as she finished her story. I love her so much. Oh yes, an elderly person with lots of time on her hands and seemingly enough patience to use it. Definitely someone you want to pick a fight with. You know how neighborhoods are at around the same age because it seems they all move into the neighborhood at around the same stage in life. That means the started home, upgraded house, forever home, etc. Well, my parents live in such a neighborhood. Majority of the neighbors are above 60 years old. So, if neighbors fight, everyone will hear about it and pick a side in an hour. My mom fills me in on what's happening when I spend the weekend at my parents' house. And beware the youngster that shows disrespect. My mom called the cops when the son of the next door neighbor was fighting with the grandson of the woman who lives across the street because his car or motorcycle was making too much noise. Grandson is the type that wants the whole world to know how great his vehicles are. The neighbors took turns calling the cops on him until his grandmother told him to move out for her sake. Story number 2. That's my dog. This story was written at some point during the final days of May 2023. Firstly, on mobile, so sorry in advance for formatting or spelling or etc. This is a revenge story that I was happy to witness. So, a little bit of background. There is a humane society shelter near where I live, and I and my friends go on there on weekends to see the cats and help socialize them. During this visit, they were introducing a new litter of puppies that were all ready to be adopted, and this will be relevant later. Let me set the scene. The volunteers are behind the desk. A couple looking to adopt is sitting and playing with the puppies, and I'm by one of the cats saying my hellos. I'm not sure when she came in, but I noticed when she raised her voice. A wild Karen had come in claiming that one of the dogs the shelter had was hers. A sweet pit bull terrier named Toffee. The volunteers and shelter owner went through the usual procedure, asking her breed, age, color, things that all could be seen on their website, which the Karen answered with increasing agitation. Then they asked if she had been spayed, microchipped, etc., all to which the Karen answered yes. However, they revealed that Toffee had come to them 6 months ago, no microchip and pregnant. The puppies out that day weren't hers, but I digress. The Karen stutters, and at this point everyone can tell that she's trying to just take a dog for free. At this moment, Toffee comes out from the kennels since they had to bring her out. The woman sees this and starts calling her, which is the name that the shelter gave her, not any other name that the dog might recognize. What's better, Toffee completely ignores the woman and instead goes over to the couple, far more interested in the puppy in the wife's arms. At this point, Karen became aggressive, trying to grab the leash from the volunteer and cursing at the staff behind the desk. The owner tells her that they won't be giving her the dog since she got the health information wrong. The dog did not recognize her, and that Toffee has been with them for 6 months and she was even on the news trying to get people to claim her. Typically, a lost dog is picked up within a week. The shelter is very good about this. The owner tells her to leave, and Karen huffs and stomps, saying she's got pictures and proof and all that. When asked to show this, instead of pulling out her phone or wallet or anything, she leaves the building, getting into her car and driving off. Everyone kinda laughed at the situation, and the owner stated that no one could see Toffee without her present. At this time, the wife placed the puppy she had been holding, looked like a Labrador mixed, cute little golden baby, and suddenly, Toffee starts huffing, something she hadn't done before. The volunteer shushes her, but the wife says, "Oh, did I take away your friend? I'm so sorry," and brings the puppy back out, which calms Toffee down. The husband then picks up some treats and gets Toffee to follow a few commands: sit, shake, etc., which she does with a smile. The couple share a look and, to my absolute delight, ask about adopting both the puppy and Toffee. At this point, the shelter was closing and me and my friend were ready to leave, but I did see them with the applications at the table and pens in hand. I'm not sure if they adopted her with revenge in mind, but it was both heartwarming and hilarious to see Toffee so happy and know that the Karen would not be stealing her away, if it matters. And because it's cute, I thought the couple were thinking of naming the puppy Butterscotch. Aww, ain't that sweet? Story number 3. A little musical holiday revenge. This happened in January 2023. Quick disclaimer. This is not my story but a relative's. But when hearing about it, I felt it might fit here. First post, long-time lurker. Enjoy. So, I'm 17 years old as I'm writing this and I'm a girl. So I just started winter break after a band concert to celebrate the holidays. This wasn't a formal one on a stage or anything, but more like a pep rally assembly deal where we played in the gym for the school. Now, since it's the holiday season, all the music was Christmas themed. The thing is, I live in a pretty diverse area, and additionally I'm Jewish. I had asked the band director if we could play a Hanukkah song at some point between the Christmas ones. Nope. He said that there was no Hanukkah music and we'd only play the Christmas stuff. Now, initially I was like, okay, I get it, there aren't a lot of songs, but there are some. I asked around and found out about another musical group, jazz band I think, and it was going to play a Hanukkah song, but it had to be cut for reasons I don't know. When I brought this up to the band director, saying we could use it, since the other group wasn't, keep in mind this would all be possible for us, and we even had a duplicate song with other groups, he still refused. This time he was short and rude to me, stating that we would only play Christmas music, not holiday music, not winter music, but specifically Christmas. I was upset. I may not be strictly religious, but the insistence that only Christmas music was important to him irritated me. I went back to my seat for practice, and when class started, he made an announcement. Instead of the typical white shirt or blouse we had to wear for performances, we were to wear red or green sweaters. Even better if they were Christmas themed. I was like, what the heck? Again, we're in a very diverse area, and I was not the only person upset with the lack of representation. Then an idea came into my mind, a plot of passive-aggressive rebellion. On the day of the performance, we all gathered in the band room before heading over to the gym. Everyone wore green and red sweaters or shirts under their hoodies. Everyone except me. Everyone except me. Instead of what he requested, I wore a rich blue sweater that stuck out like a sore thumb in the sea of Christmas. When the director saw me, his smile faltered and he looked upset, but didn't have time to say anything to me as we walked out. Now, one of my favorite parts. I'm in a section leader and I sit in first chair during sit-down performances, so everyone would see me from the bleachers, even the ones at the bottom. The effect it had was emphasized when we only played Christmas music, and when the performance and applause ended, I could see some people whispering and pointing at my sweater and glancing at the director. He looked uncomfortable at the whispering and didn't stick around for the rest of the assembly. So, mission accomplished. How silly and how petty do you have to be to put such limitations? Oh my god, that director is such an idiot. Anyway, moving on. Story number 4. This story belongs to the subreddit of MaliciousCompliance. This story is titled, Shh, this is a study place. This happened in January 2023. So near me there are rooms in the various academic and recreational buildings specifically designed for either solo or group studies. I have a bit of trouble studying in my dorm, since I lose focus there. So I use these rooms to be productive. For the first 2 quarters of my freshman year, I would use this one specific conference room that was out of the way. Most of these rooms have huge hallway-facing windows, and I abhor being watched. And there were even these 2 crows that would hang out by the window. It was a big, empty, and had a whiteboard and a projector. Basically, it was perfect for me. I would spend hours after class there until 1 a.m. when the building would close and they kicked me out. I ended up becoming pretty good friends with the closing staff there. Then they came. It was a group of 5 boys that would suddenly barge in while I was working and would use the room to horse around and ruin the quiet and productive space I had. First, they would knock on the door, poke their heads in, ask if they could hang out in there, and like an idiot, I said yes. This had happened before with people spotting the room and asking if they could sit with me, and they would usually be kind and quiet and study as well. These guys though, they were just there to mess around. Every day they'd show up and eventually stop asking permission. At some point I asked them if they could be a little quieter since I could hear them through my headphones. And they just gave me a look and waved me off. They would arrive after me and leave before me. So the staff never really saw them, and I had no grounds to complain since they technically weren't doing anything wrong, as the space wasn't a library, so there were no volume rules. One day when I was studying for the midterm, I locked the door for the first time since I really needed to prepare. When they came and jiggled the handle, I did my best to ignore them, pretending I couldn't hear. Instead, they went and got a staff member to unlock it. When they asked why I had done that, I told them that I needed to study and that I couldn't handle them being loud right now. They got angry and told me if I didn't like it, then I should leave. I complained that I had been there first, that there were other birds' places they could hang out and be loud, but they said it would be easier if I moved. Now, I could, as there were plenty of other study rooms. But in theory, so could they, as well as going to designated social spaces where they could be as loud as they wanted at their dorms. This room was tucked away and I had gotten comfortable using it, as my counselor had shown it to me when I was having trouble with mental health at the start of the year due to academic stressors. They had stopped being nice and gracious, treating me like I was the invader instead of them, and it annoyed me to no end. Next day, one of the guys was sitting there alone when I arrived and the door was locked. He looked up and leered at me, literally laughing in my face. He poked his head out and told me that he was there first and to go elsewhere because this was the room. But I've been studying here all year. Why do you want this room so badly? First come, first serve. Better find somewhere else to study from now on. It's not like your name is on this place. Huh. Oh, my name isn't on it? We'll see about that. Malicious compliance time. See, the system for the rooms is typically first come, first serve, just like he said. However, there's another way to get a room. Reserve it. Our school has a website that you can use to book a space for any amount of time. And the reservations show up a little screen next to the door and it will turn red when the room isn't in use. You can put the names of the participants and the reason for the booking. And whoever has the reservation gets priority even if there was someone in the room already. The thing is, not a lot of people know about the website, since it isn't advertised anywhere or really talked about. You probably guessed what I did. I reserved the room from the time my classes ended until the time the building closed for the next day. When I got there, some of the guys were sitting in there already, some waving at me, others shooing me away. I simply smiled and walked to the staff office, telling them that I had reserved the room. But some people were already in there and I was having trouble getting them out. I'm soft-spoken and strangers make me nervous, so they were willing to help. The staff person came and told them that they needed to leave. They retorted that they were there first, again telling me to go somewhere else. Then the staff explained that I had reserved the room, that I had priority and they needed to leave now. And I held up the reservation receipt on my phone. This seemed to reach them as they grumbled and left, instead sitting out in the lobby where they continued to goof off, and I got the room all to myself. This worked so well that I booked the room for the next day, and the day after that. I booked it for as far as I could and set up an alarm so I could book another day when the site updated. When I came back the next day, one of the guys was standing in front of the door looking at the screen that had my name on it. I slipped past him, closing the door behind me. I waved, as if huffed, and walked away. I still let other people in, and eventually when I moved off campus, I could set up my own space that was just as effective, but for a solid 4 months, I kept this up, and no one ever barged in on my sessions again. Story number 5. The following story was taken from rSlash I don't work here lady. I didn't work here, but I do now. A bit of context. Back in high school, I was at the top of my class. I'm talking 2% of the whole school, AP classes, etc. After school would end, I would spend time finishing homework in the library since I focus better there. Now, I'm a very shy person and I can't bring myself to talk to strangers. I would always get to the library early and pick a table at the back to avoid everyone else. However, since I was there so often, the supervisors and tutors began to recognize me. We would talk, chat about how the day went, general stuff between student and staff. Then one time, one of the tutors for algebra had trouble explaining something, so she called me over and asked if I knew what the kid needed help with. I did, and though I felt awkward, I went through an explanation, using scrap paper to draw out what I meant. I work with little kids, so visual representation is how I tend to explain things, if a verbal or written one didn't work. He understood and I went back to my own work. A couple days later, this happens again with geometry. Then again with English, and again, and suddenly almost every day either a student will come up to me or a tutor will call me over and I'll be helping someone. I do have very recognizable hair. It isn't hard to spot me. Eventually one of the supervisors asks me if I'd like to become an after-school tutor, since I already help so much. Student tutors are rare, but I would essentially sit in a designated area for tutors and have people come up to ask for help rather than to go to them. More isolated, which was comfortable for me. I was very hesitant, but ended up accepting, and I met some great students, and it felt good to be so helpful. Now I don't actively tutor, but people still recognize me and come up to ask about homework and projects if we share a class in college. So I may not have worked there, but I suppose I eventually did. Sometimes these events are wholesome and character building. Story number 6. This story came from r// MaliciousCompliance. The title of the story is Don't Want My Help? Sure, go ahead and get yourself fired. I would like to clarify that I'm a first-time poster, I'm a long-time lurker, so please forgive any mistakes. TLDR, jerk is such a jerk that his own actions get him fired. Too long didn't read, jerk is such a jerk that his own actions get him fired. A bit of background. A while back, when I was still in high school, I worked at the local cinema to earn a bit of pocket money and experience. I stayed for a couple of years, working weekends when school was in session. I think I was halfway into my second year when the target of this revenge came into the picture. We'll call him Luke. Luke was a new hire and was just learning the ropes, which was common as turnover was high since we were all students. He seemed alright at first, and everyone was nice to him since we were all pretty close and knew one another from school, and we welcomed him in. I don't think even a week passed before the problem started. The first issue I heard of was that Luke was trying to flirt with one of the girls. The thing was, this girl was already in a relationship with one of the other employees, and everybody knew this, including Luke. That didn't stop him though. And eventually the girl told him to his face to cut it out. It only got worse from there. Now, I do my best to see the good in people and give them the benefit of the doubt. Despite what the others were saying, I still tried to get along with him. This unfortunately changed during the first real conversation I had with him. We were on break at the same time, and about 5 of us crowded into the little break room for lunch. I forget what exactly we were talking about, but I remember it was an uncomfortable topic, and Luke was using a lot of explicatives. The break room was not soundproof, and there were patrons outside, especially children. I tried to warn him about using that language so loudly that he might get into trouble if a customer heard him. Immediately his attitude towards me changed, and he responded with something along the lines of, "I can't say whatever I want. I have the right of free speech, don't tell me what to do." What? Oh, she's okay, chill. I was just concerned, but you do you. Ya puedo decir lo que quiera, carajo. Tengo la libertad, chingada madre, así que no me digas qué hacer, coño. A few minutes later, the convo had switched to high school, and Luke was raving about how Caucasians were the majority in the high schools in our district. Now, for my high school, this isn't true, as most of the community and students attending were Latino and made up about 70% of our student body. I told him as much. I told him something like, "That's not the case for high school, the high school where we go." "Oh yeah, it is? White is the majority everywhere. I have a friend that goes there." I actually go there. It's mostly... why are you talking? Excuse me? Who invited you to this conversation? I wasn't talking to you. Who asked? Now this irritated me. I know it's a joke about looking for who asked, but this was before that became a thing, and I found it extremely rude. But in a moment of clarity, the best comeback came to mind, like arguing in the shower by yourself. And to this day, I could only wish to be able to recreate the moment. Smiling, I threw his words right back in his face. Free speech! The others at the table were laughing as I threw away the rest of my lunch and left the break room. My heart was beating too fast from the weird adrenaline rush I got, and I spent the rest of my break in the back of concessions until it was time to clock back in. I think that combo was what sparked Luke's hatred of me. Ever since then, he would glare at me whenever I walked by, would dump the trash from his bin when we were sweeping the floors for me to pick up, and generally was a jerk. His behavior kept getting worse. He would threaten to fight people, and he was a sharp potato of a boy, so no one was really scared. He would argue, say rude, passive-aggressive, or downright racist things, and was just generally a jerk. At some point during a shift I wasn't there, he cornered the girl he had been eyeing and kept verbally harassing her, to the point that she hid in the manager's office where he couldn't get to her. She was a sweet and loyal girl and friend, and she and her boyfriend could be described with the phrase puppy love, and had been together for a long time. The boyfriend was naturally angry when she texted the group chat about what happened, and wanted to get Luke fired. However, people were hesitant about this, saying that managers wouldn't want to because he'd claimed discrimination, as he was trans, and that he hadn't done anything blatantly wrong. Then another one of the employees made a suggestion. Luke was incompetent. We all knew this. Why not make the manager see it too? Revenge time. Revenge time. It wasn't hard to do, since Luke would tend to shoot himself in the foot. When possible, we'd point him out to managers when reviewing the cameras in the halls about him dumping his trash can when sweeping onto the ground in front of patrons. when he was cursing up a storm during break. A text would be sent and someone would lead a manager to him to be caught. He rarely cleaned up. He was rude and loud, and the incident with the girl didn't help his case. It still wasn't enough, and week after week, his name was on the schedule. Then my opportunity came. See, at the cinema, there's a position called Point, aka the ticket taker, that lets you into the theater area. It's the second most dreaded position, the first being self-serve cleanup. And as you have to stand in place and interact with customers at a rapid-fire pace, smiling and listening for theaters to be called at the same time. When the night ends, the last person on point has to close and clean the serve stations. Today, to my initial dread, Luke and I were on point. The entire time, Luke would leave his station and pace the lobby towards me, then back, not even sweeping the ground as he went. He wasn't supposed to leave point and had to walk around customers to get back to his podium to help them. He was told off by a manager once or twice for this, but he continued his antics anyway. Then, as things slowed down, one of the managers approached me and told me that we were going down to one point. One person at the center rather than at both entrances. And that I'd have to explain to Luke how to close point before I went back to help clean concessions. It had to be this way since I had already taken the sanitation test and Luke had yet to do so, and therefore wasn't allowed behind concessions. When I finished closing my point, I walked over to Luke and told him to move his podium to the center, so he could take closing point. It did, though scowling at me. When he was set, I began to explain. Okay, so you'll be closing point tonight after the last movie starts. You will need to go to this point and... go away! What? I don't need your help, so don't talk to me. But I need to teach you how to close point. I don't care, shut up. I know you don't like me, but this is work. You need to do that, and... No, I don't want your help. Shut the hell up. No, I don't want your help. Shut the hell up. But... Fuck off, don't talk to me. At this point I was beyond upset. I was furious, and I was trying to help, even after how he had acted, how he treated everyone here. I didn't care what he said in the break room, but it shouldn't affect work. This was ridiculous. I must have snapped or something because I complied, walking away saying, "Oh fine, I don't care, don't ever talk to me again." Hey, I said... And I replied, "I said don't ever talk to me again," I said, waving a hand over my shoulder. I went behind concessions to help, where he couldn't reach me. I don't know when, but I started crying out of frustration, and one of my friends came and hugged me, bringing me to a corner to cool down. I don't get angry often, but when I do, it makes me scared. I was just sick of his antics, sick of the way he spoke to me, just sick of his attitude. I'm not sure how long I sat back there, but soon enough, that same friend came and waved me to the front of the concessions. I wiped my face and walked out, and he pointed to point. There was Luke being instructed by the manager on how to close point, and the manager did not look happy with him. Arms folded, frowning, flat tone, everything spoke of irritation. My friends said that they had already explained that Luke refused my help when the manager asked them what was going on, as point can be seen and heard from almost the entire lobby. Seeing the scene lifted my spirits a bit, and I was able to end the night relatively easy. The next weekend, when the schedule came out, I didn't even have to check my email. It was posted in the group text, specifically the section with Luke's name. It was blacked out. If he had quit, his name would have been removed. But the fact that it was blacked out meant it was a sudden event. Luke had been fired. I'm not sure what it was that they fired him for anymore, but considering we were always low on staff and they had to worry about discrimination, I'm guessing there were enough complaints that they had to fire him. I like to think that last interaction I had with him was the final nail in the coffin. But I was just glad to see him go more than anything. I heard he worked at a common fast food place for a while, but ended up getting McFire from there too. Good luck in life, Luke. You weren't missed.